Okay, let's talk about what athletes are eating during distance events. Now, I'm only going to give you a small introduction to the variety of options athletes have, uh, and I'll show you some of the products that are available. But it's also important to recognize that a lot of athletes will use their own real food for hydrating, and some actually mix their own drinks rather than buying something off the shelf. They try to tailor what they're going to take. And you'll see as I start going through this, there's lots of options for how to get fuel in during a race. And ultimately, you do need to figure out what works for you. And that's a terrible, um, piece of advice. Is a lot of times people ask, "What do I need to eat during an endurance event?" And you really need to figure out what's going to work for you. Every one of us is a little bit different. The environment is always going to be a little bit different for every race, and what you eat in a hot, humid environment may be different than what you take in on a cold, rainy day in a race. So it's often good to have some options and to know what you can tolerate. It's also important to know what is available during the race. And so you hear people talk about what's at aid stations. And the aid stations are planned by the race director. And the aid stations are stocked with different fuels and drinks and foods. And it's always important to figure out ahead of time what those aid stations will be stocked with, so that you can either plan on using what's in the aid station or plan on passing by the aid station and making sure that you carry the type of fuel that you want to use. For example, if a race is using drink X, whatever that drink is, and you can't tolerate that drink, then you need to plan on taking your own drink that will help you cover the distance of the race, and not picking up that drink that's offered by the aid station. All right, so and aid stations often will uh, offer real foods like bananas, pretzels, maybe oranges, maybe chips, and the aid stations can be different in terms of what they provide for a bike segment versus a run segment. And so those are things that when you start looking at races, you start trying to do course recon. And part of your course recon is to figure out what the aid will be available. And again, so you can make your plan to cover the distance that you're looking at. So let me go through some examples. I've just got a box of stuff here that I just pulled from our shelves. Both my wife and I do a lot of these endurance events, and we've tried a lot of different products, and some products work and some don't. Some work for her, some work for me. And some of these, neither of us are using anymore because they're not working. I won't go through them, but let me, so first of all, realize that a lot of times you put your own fuel in a flask like this. This would be one that you'd be using most likely for a run, or you fill it up with something and you put it in your back pocket on your in your cycling jersey or your tri-kit and carry it on the bike. So important to know that when people talk about getting different fuels, they may, if they're sort of a semi-liquid, like a gel, or even liquid, you can put it in a flask like that. Water bottles you fill up with either water, electrolytes, gels, anything that will come out of this sprocket. I've made the mistake of putting in some pretty vicious, thick fluids in my bottle, and then on a cold day, it's not coming out of the nozzle. And so I had a whole bottle of fuel one time, and I couldn't even access it because it was too thick. Okay, so you'll hear people talk about gels. Gels come in packets like this, okay? This is one brand, this is KODA, okay? And it's always important to look on the back in terms of, or the label to see what the gel consists of. In this case, this gel is has 36 milligrams of sodium, and it is primary carbohydrates. It has 29 grams of carbohydrates right here. And this is about 100 calories within this packet here. So you start making a plan, depending on how many carbohydrates, how many grams of carbohydrates you're going to plan to try to get in, or how many calories you're going to plan to get in. This gel is sort of a measured amount of both of those. And you can see, just by me squishing it, the consistency of this is pretty sort of liquidish, but it still has a gel type of texture to it. What athletes will often do is, rather than take a bunch of these for an Ironman where you may be out for 10, 12, 15 hours, they'll take a bunch of these gels and put them into a bottle. And then they have a concentrated bottle of gels. Obviously, you use the same flavor when you put it in the bottle or in the bottle. The upside of that is you don't need to carry a bunch of these or figure out how to store a bunch of these. You just put them all in the bottle. The downside is this. If you have the packet like this, you know exactly how many calories you just took in if you emptied this gel. But if you're sipping out of this, you don't know. So you have to get a sense of how much you're going to take, when you're going to sip, how many calories you're going to get as you try to drink this type of concentrated mixture. Okay, so this is a wild berry flavor. Okay. Got to try it, see whether or not you like it, and realize that these come in all different flavors. Here's a cappuccino. So this one, obviously, is named cappuccino because it actually has a bit of caffeine. So this has 80 milligrams of caffeine in it. You have to decide whether or not caffeine is something that is going to work for you. Some people are responders to caffeine. Some people are not responders to caffeine. Some people get a bit of GI distress when using caffeine, some don't. So you have to try these ahead of time to see whether or not they're going to work for you. All right, let's see. I had a couple other flavors. Oh, well, here's another one. Just a different brand. Honey Stinger, all right, which the consistency of this is a lot like honey. This one is 100 calories in this packet. 50 milligrams of sodium, 50 milligrams of potassium, 24 grams of carbohydrate. All right, so if you're targeting trying to get about 50 to 60 grams of carbohydrate in an hour, you're taking 2 of these every hour. Or you're dumping a whole bunch of these into a bottle and then drinking out of the bottle. All right. Yeah, oh, so this flavor, this is vanilla. All right. And I'll tell you, trying the flavors when you're just sitting around, just sort of talking and trying it out, things taste one way, but when you start exercising, your taste sensations change a bit. That's anecdotally. And then if the environment is hot and humid, your taste may actually be a little bit different from that. So really important to try your fuel out on your regular rides and in different environments as well. There's some Mango Passion. This is the same brand I showed before. Again, about 30 grams of carbohydrate in this packet here. It is probably good to sometimes look at the type of carbohydrate that's in here. This is maltodextrin in here, and some brands will have different mixtures of types of carbohydrates. You can also take in fuel in a solid bar type format, okay? You could use a candy bar, check it out. Snickers, Baby Ruth, I know people use those. This is that same brand, KODA. And this has about 200 calories, okay? 200 calories. About 23 grams of carbohydrate. This actually has a bit of fat in it, so 9 grams of fat. And it also has some protein, 5.8 grams of fat, or excuse me, grams of protein. So now, and only 22 milligrams of sodium. So this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to have a little bit more mixture of fats and carbohydrates than just like a gel, which is really concentrated carbohydrate. Have to decide if this is going to work for you, because this is going to have a little bit more fiber, and you've got to figure out your hydration plan relative to taking this versus a gel, and whether or not you can handle the consistency of a bar during exercise. Okay, this is another gel-like. It's a little different shape. It's a little different consistency. This one is a little bit more of a fluid versus a gel. This is Science and Sport. This has 90 calories in it, and it has 22 grams of carbohydrate and 10 milligrams of sodium. And this is also multidextrin carbohydrate. So with this, you can drink it straight, or what some people do is take this and pour it into a bottle with water, and we'll drink it that way. This is a lemon lime, which is seems to be a popular type of flavor. And there is some interesting research on flavor of drinks and how often people will drink. Oh, this is another one. I don't know. I haven't used this one, but this is one that we probably picked up at a race. Energy Gel Strawberry. Let's see. And this one does not have, this looks like we must have picked this up at a international race, because I can't read this. So why don't we leave that one? Okay, here's another honey stinger. This is just a different flavor. This is chocolate, but now it's got caffeine as well. Okay, 32 milligrams of caffeine. Got to look and see when you're taking a gel whether or not you have caffeine in it. And again, going back to what I said before, you've got to figure out whether or not you can tolerate the caffeine and whether or not it helps you. And some people will say they can take caffeine in the beginning of a race. Some will say at the end of the race, what have you. This is just another flask that you can fill up with different gels, and obviously you can take it on a run, so easily to hold on to, or you stick it into a race belt or back pocket, or even on cycling. If you got pockets in your tri-kit, or if you wear a cycling jersey, you fill this up, put this in your back pocket, and you have some fuel available to you. All right, you see tablets like this, tubes of tablets, and it looks like that. All right. These are electrolyte tablets. So you're taking these tablets and putting into a bottle of water. How many tablets you put in depends on what you can tolerate, taste-wise or even substance-wise. Minimally, these typically require 1 tablet per bottle, but I know people talk about putting 2 or 3 tablets in a water bottle. So again, you have to experiment to see what's going to work for you. This is much more focused on electrolytes. So this has a long list of electrolytes, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, chloride, sodium, potassium. So it's got a mixture of electrolytes in it, but calories, it's got a little caffeine in it, it's got a lot of caffeine, 75 milligrams, 9 calories. So this is not a fuel, okay? This is to provide electrolytes to you during exercise. And this is something we need to pay attention to when we're doing a lot of sweating, that if we don't replace some of the electrolytes and we continue to drink water, we can run into a dilution of the system, which would lead to something like hyponatremia, and that can be a problem. It's probably a bigger problem than dehydration. Here's just another tablet. And again, you just pop these off. Now, you don't carry this whole tube with you during an event. You may take a few of these tablets and put them store them on your bike, or maybe store them in a pocket on a run. And then as you pick up water, you would add the tablets to the new water bottles. Remember, on the bike segment of an Ironman, most people are doing that. They're, high-end age group athletes are doing it around 5 hours. Pro athletes, men and women, are under 5 hours. A typical time for an iron distance, 112 miles, would be anywhere from 6 to 7 hours even. So you're on the bike for 6 or 7 hours. You typically can't carry all your fluid and fuel. So this is where you pick things up along the way. And one of the things you can pick up are water bottles. And it's obviously just water. So now what you would do is store some of these on your bike. And as you pick up a water bottle, you add a tablet or two or whatever you figured out works for you. Different manufacturer, Noon. All right. Let's see. Oh, and then this is just salt. Okay, so you get a little tablet or a little tube like this. Yeah, put it in a pocket again, or store it on your bike. And as you go along, you just flip the lid, and you put a bunch of this on your tongue and take it. So 1/8 of a teaspoon is 290 milligrams of sodium. That's some chloride, calcium, magnesium, and potassium in it. So what people will do is they'll take this, put it on their tongue, take some water, and do this every 15 minutes or so to take in your electrolytes. So an easy way to deliver electrolytes straight to the system. Typically, you're not adding this to your water. I'm sure people do that, but it's meant to take directly on your tongue. Okay, and then here's another one. This is the KODA brand. And again, these are electrolytes, a variety of electrolytes. So it does have a little bit of fat, but really no calories. So, and they're recommending 1 tablet per half a liter of water. And then there's really extreme electrolytes. This is a brand called The Right Stuff. This little packet, little sachet, has 1,780 milligrams of sodium. So this is a high dose of sodium. Now you do add this to a bottle of water. So this company is of the mindset that we probably are not taking enough sodium during events where we're sweating a lot. And it's typically the case is that even the drinks that we take do not have enough sodium in them to really keep the system operating well. So that's a high sodium type of drink. Okay, so now, or sachet, and then you dump that into a water bottle. You do not drink that straight. I tried and it's really salty. Okay, so races will often have some brand of drink on the course. You want to find out what that brand is, and then either train with that brand of drink if you think you're going to access it, or like I said before, you're going to plan your own nutrition and carry your carbohydrates and your electrolytes separately, and then just pick up water at the aid stations. So this drink has 140 calories, has 270 milligrams of sodium, and 36 grams of carbohydrate. All right, so again, you have to make your plan for how much to take and when to take your fuel. Now, what a lot of people are doing now is they're sort of separating out their fuel intake, their fats and carbohydrate, versus their hydration intake, because the environment that you're racing in may actually really impact how much fluid you're going to want to take in. You're going to sweat a lot more in a hot, dry environment than in a cool, rainy environment. All right, so let's get to some other powders. This is S-Fuels. This is made more for the athlete that is trying to use fat as a fuel during an endurance event. Now remember, this pendulum seems to swing back and forth between should we be using carbohydrates or should we be using our fats during endurance exercise? We don't have a solid answer yet. And early on, the advice was to take carbohydrates. Then the pendulum swung back to, well, no, you probably need to take more fats. And now the pendulum seems to be swinging back, and it's sort of in the middle where people are saying, well, maybe you should train on fats and race on carbohydrates, or maybe you should have a mixture or be metabolically flexible to be able to use both fats and carbohydrates. I don't know the answer yet. I keep experimenting with what's going to work. I've tried this fuel as well. And you've got to really figure out what your gut can handle and why your gut may not be able to handle certain things. So this has, if you take a scoop of this, put it into your water bottle. 1 scoop will have about 45 calories. It'll have some fat, 4 grams, 240 milligrams of sodium, some protein, and no carbohydrates in this. Okay, so this does not have carbohydrates. This just has fat in it. All right, so a very different type of fuel than what I've been showing you so far, which is more focused on carbohydrates. All right, so then, and I'm not sponsored by any of these, so I'm just showing these because these are ones that we're using. This is a popular brand with endurance athletes, Ucan. Ucan is more of a starch. It's sort of like a cornstarch. So if you pull cornstarch off the shelf in your kitchen, that's what this is like. It's advertised as being sort of a what we call slow burn. It's not so much like a sugar, which is going to be used right away. It's a little bit more complex and will provide a little bit more sustained insulin response as opposed to just taking like a table sugar, which will spike insulin really quickly. And you really want to, and I think this is coming up in the chapter, you want to try to avoid, most likely it makes sense to avoid these fluctuations in insulin, which influences how much blood glucose is pulled into the cell. And so this is designed to avoid those insulin spikes and be a little bit more flat line with the amount of insulin that's released. So this has no fats. This has a little bit of sodium, 50 milligrams per scoop. You take a scoop of this, put it in the bottle, or you may make a super concentrated bottle and put in 3 scoops into a bottle. It has 22 grams of carbohydrate per scoop and to about 90 calories. So again, a lot of people will take 3 scoops of this, put it in a bottle. It's a super concentrated bottle of cornstarch, and then sip it as you go along, and then also drink water at the same time. Okay, so then another, just to go different spectrum, is Kinokana. This is designed more for people who are thinking of using fats as a fuel. So this has about 55 calories of fuel and no carbohydrates. And these are ketones. So a little bit different source of fuel for you during the race. You've got to really try this and see if it agrees with you, and it may actually take a time to get used to a product like this, because it is providing a fuel that enters the pathway a little bit differently than glucose. This looks like another electrolyte drink. So it's got a little bit of carbohydrate. So this is just a noon powder. This is going to have some sodium, 380 milligrams. It's got 16 grams of carbohydrate per scoop. So again, you're taking a scoop and you're putting this in the bottle. Usually 1 scoop per bottle, or you can start thinking about doing a concentrated bottle, but then you need to have another bottle of just water. And again, you're going through your aid stations. If you have your concentrated bottle, you can make a concentrated bottle of your fuel that may last for the whole race, but then along the way, you're picking up just bottles of water. And then this one seems sort of odd. This is almost like peanut butter. So this is a product by F-Bomb. You would take some of this, take it out of the jar, put it into a flask, or they actually sell individual packets, sachets. And each packet would have 22 grams of fat. All right, so again, this is that pendulum on the fat side, 30 milligrams of sodium, 4 grams of carbohydrate. So it has a little bit of carbohydrate. So you got to figure out whether or not something like this is going to work. People will also take real food, trail mix. All right. A lot of the fuel choices that you're going to make are dependent on the intensity of exercise that you're going to be going. And if you're going to go a high level of intensity, you really need to zero in on what fuel is going to work for you. And if you're going high intensity, you probably need to lean more towards carbohydrates than fats. As your intensity goes down, as the time of your endurance event goes up, then you have more options available to you for types of fuel. And if you're, obviously if you're walking, that is a lower intensity, and there your options for fueling include real food, are much different than if you're trying to exercise at 90% of your maximum effort. All right. So that intensity really comes back to play with the type of fuel you're going to use. So in terms of endurance performance, what you use for sprint triathlon, well, a lot of times with sprint triathlon, you won't use anything. For an Olympic triathlon, which is 1.5K swim, 40K bike, and a 10K run, and can take probably around 2 hours for the top athletes, maybe 2.5, 3 hours for mere mortals. What you take during that type of event will be different than a half Ironman, which is a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and a 13.1 mile run. That will take the top athletes 4 hours or less. Competitive age group athletes, about 4.5 to 5 hours. And then mere mortals, 5 to 6, maybe 7 hours, okay? That type of fuel that you take during that event is gonna be different than Olympic, and it will be different than what you would take during an Ironman, which is double the distance of the half Ironman. But it's not just double the time, it's actually a little bit longer. So you really need to explore the different types of fuel available, and you gotta know when one type of fuel is not working. How do you know? Well, you have GI problems. Your stomach becomes upset. You're not able to take in fluid. You're not able to take in anything. You may be throwing up. You may be having to hit the porta-john along the way too often. So those are signs that something is not working. And then you need to learn from that and either try a different product or a different concentration of that product, or think about what your hydration plan is in terms of being separated from your fueling plan. All right, I hope that helps give a sense of what athletes are eating and or drinking during endurance events. All right, thanks.